Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Once again, Joe Nice coming to you as always live and direct on a December 17, 2020. December the 17th, 2020, December 172020. Today's an interesting day. Today's a cold day. It's freezing out to everybody that's dealing with the snow in the Northeast. I know certain parts of southern New York are dealing with feet of snow, not just a couple of inches or maybe a foot, feet of snow. Northeast Pennsylvania is dealing with about 3 feet of snow. Certain parts of southern New York State are looking at 40 inches of snow because of this nor'easter. Times Square is under a blanket of snow. And the Canadian Maritimes are expecting their snow later on today. Should be rather interesting here in North Carolina. It rained, and it rained all day yesterday. All day. All day. So, a lot happening, a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss. I know I haven't been on here for the past few days because I did a bunch of videos over the past couple of days, and you can check that footage on my Instagram page. My Instagram page is Joe Nice at Joe Nice DJ, Instagram.com/JOENICEDJ. You can follow it there, see what's going on there, see what's happening with all of basically everything that I feel like talking about right now. The federal government is coming down to the wire to offer a stimulus package to all of the Americans, and I completely think the package is inadequate. I completely think the package is a total pile of shit, and I think the American people deserve better. The American people deserve better. The American people deserve a lot more than just a $600 check, a one-time $600 payment, and an extension of 13 weeks of unemployment benefits, because that's what we're being offered right now. The current negotiations are a 13-week extension of state benefits, an additional 13 weeks of federal unemployment benefits. So whatever you were receiving from your state, if your state unemployment benefits have been exhausted, they're giving you another 13 weeks. And then on top of whatever the additional extensions we were getting from the CARES Act, with the CARES Act, everybody was getting an additional $600 in addition to what the state was offering. So right now what's happening is if your state benefits, whatever you were getting from your state, if they're exhausted, you're getting an additional 13 weeks. If they're continuing, if you get them now, you get an additional 13 weeks. And on top of that, you're getting an extra $300 on top of whatever your state is giving you. For many people, this is basically half of what they were getting during the CARES Act, because the CARES Act was giving you an additional $600 on top of what you were getting. Now, supposedly, once this final deal gets negotiated, and it may be negotiated and finalized as early as sometime today or tomorrow, we're supposedly getting an additional 13 weeks of unemployment benefit money. I have not read nor heard nor seen anything with regards to any retroactive pay from the ending of the CARES Act until now. So nothing retroactive. This is a new set of circumstances, a new 13 weeks. Keep it moving. This bill is woefully inadequate for many Americans because there's a whole lot of Americans that haven't been able to make their rent payments in months. I was reading something earlier today that the average amount of money that renters are in arrears is just under $6,000. Just under $6,000. And a $600 check is not going to do much if you're going to be put on the street in about 2 weeks. That's not going to do anything. Bear in mind, this bill, this stimulus package or this relief package is supposed to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $900 billion. Within this time frame, the federal government has approved $740 billion for the Pentagon. Just like that, $740 billion, no questions asked, no strings attached. I've been saying this, and I will continue to say this until the American people get what they deserve. America needs to go on strike. America needs to go on strike. We need to shut this country down. And if there are plenty of people working right now, but not nearly as many as before the pandemic. And when I go on my morning walks every morning, I walk past a fleet of UPS trucks, or as my daughter says, UPS trucks, because it says UPS, UPS. So UPS trucks. But they all honk, beep, beep, wave. I wave, they keep it moving. If every UPS driver in America went on strike right now, a wildcat strike, just said, you know what? Yeah, our customers that we deliver packages to, we're going to stand with them because they're being screwed by our government. Could you imagine how quick this entire situation would resolve itself? If FedEx drivers, and I walk past a bunch of them too on my morning walk. Could you imagine if FedEx drivers said, you know what? Yeah, putting the keys down. We're not delivering these packages. We're going to let these packages pile up. And yeah, you know what? There might be some medication somewhere in these. That's a risk that we're willing to take because we need to make sure that everybody gets what they need. That's healthcare. That's a universal basic income until this pandemic is over. That's rent moratoriums and rent forgiveness. And that's student loan forgiveness. Cancellation. And we'll sit this one out. If FedEx truck drivers, package drivers, and the UPS or UPS drivers shut it down, this country would, we would, if they had shut it down back in September, come on now. Gonna get to some comments because we like talking. Oh, extra special guest in the chat, Thomas Hidalgo, co-CEO, saying, what's good, Joe? Finally here for a live chat. As long as Democrats don't stand up to Nancy Pelosi, we'll never see Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic. I thoroughly agree. And I don't know how much people watching YouTube right now. One of my favorite YouTube commentators, a gentleman named Jimmy Dore, he's gone ahead and come up with essentially the Dore referendum. He's basically calling on progressive to withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi's speakership until Nancy Pelosi puts Medicare for all on the floor for a House, or on the House floor for a vote. And I think it is a brilliant political strategy because you would have to be a deranged asshole to go ahead and say, you know what? Nah, I don't want to give everybody health care. You'd have to be even worse to say, I don't want to give everybody health care in the middle of a pandemic. Now, for everybody that's saying, oh, this is just a performative gesture, or this is just political theater, or he's bluffing. Well, how performative is this when Nancy Pelosi may no longer be Speaker of the House? How performative is this? How performative is this when if this take a look at what the Republicans were willing to do. Republicans petitioned the Supreme Court to overturn the results of an election. And nobody said that was performative. No one said that was performative at all. Again, Republicans were willing to ask the Supreme Court to overturn the results of an election. And no one said, that's performative. Oh, come on. That's not, you've been BSing. But when it comes to people's health care, a human right, as prescribed by, I think, Article 23 of the International Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which we celebrated last week, December 10th. And healthcare is a human right. No one said a word. No one said anything. Oh, yeah, it's okay. It's cool. No big deal. No big deal. Quite honestly, what I would like to see happen is not only a complete defunding of the Department of Defense, essentially the Pentagon. There's been millions of Americans that have not received any sort of stimulus, any sort of relief, for all intents and purposes, since the expiration of the CARES Act. Bear in mind, the Vice President of the United States makes $230,000 per year. Nancy Pelosi, who is worth over $100 million, Nancy Pelosi makes $223,500 per year. Every senator and every House of Representative, their salary is $174,000. I'm going to say that again, $174,000. And guess what? They all have health care. They all have really good retirement benefits. They get everything they need. And if you go ahead and if you make a speech to a particular organization, they could charge you a bunch of money for that. Take, for instance, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's speaking fee. Her speech fee is, I think, $45,000 to give a speech. 45 grand. And that's just one person. That's just one person. How much money do you think Chuck Schumer is charging Goldman Sachs for a speech? If AOC is getting 45 grand for a speech, come on, what do you think some of these other senators are getting? How do you think Nancy Pelosi is worth over $100 million? How do you think Kelly Loeffler, who's a state senator in Georgia, who has a net worth, I think, of $500 million, mostly because of her husband? Wall Street gets all the money they want, just like that. When it comes to people, let's wait. Let's figure it out. Let's means test it. Let's give you an extra 13 weeks. We'll see what happens. Bruno's saying, just for a speech. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The speaking circuit is lucrative business if you can get into that line of business. It's lucrative. Quite lucrative. And if you're controversial, it's even more lucrative. Because people at that point really want to hear what you have to say. If you're informative and funny, you can write your own ticket, cash your own checks. Senate Majority Leader makes $193,400 a year. I'm personally in favor of completely defunding Congress until they pass this bill. And I have no confidence that when Joe Biden becomes fully inaugurated in about 34 days, that he will go ahead and offer up a new package of a new relief package for the people. I have no confidence in that. The unemployment numbers just came out. Another 850,000 people filed for first-time unemployment benefits. What is that number of first-time claims going to look like in about, today's December 17th, Christmas is next Friday, New Year's is the following Thursday. What's that going to look like? What's that unemployment number going to look like on January 8th? When all this temporary work dries up and nobody needs their packages delivered, and UPS doesn't need any extra package handlers, and FedEx doesn't need any extra delivery drivers, and Amazon doesn't need any temporary holiday work. What's that unemployment number going to look like of first-time claims? It's going to be over 1 million. It's going to be well over 1 million. Co-CEO Thomas saying the Clintons were paid $153 million for speeches combined. $153 million. And again, the federal government the Congress just approved $740 billion for the Pentagon. And the same Congress is going to try to approve $900 billion as a relief package for the American people. No retroactive payments from what I understand. $300 a week extra and an extra 13 weeks of your state unemployment benefits. 13 weeks. 13 weeks is essentially 4 months. So if this bill gets passed today, the unemployment benefits are going to end sometime around Easter, depending on when Easter arrives. That's 13 weeks. That's 13 weeks. Does anybody think that the job markets will be back up and running, or at least have some reasonable level of functionality in 13 weeks? I'm not convinced half of the United States population will be vaccinated in 13 weeks. And this is why I keep saying about people talking about having festivals come back and start playing shows again. Oh, maybe we can start playing shows by the spring or the fall. Nope, I'm not seeing it. I am not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. Clearly, summer 2020 was canceled, and I'm not being Don Downer or anything. I just don't see shows coming back in 2021 either. Not until everybody gets not until there's new protocols for health and vaccinations and immunizations, and not until people have some sort of disposable income again. which I know many people don't because many people have been fired from their jobs through no fault of their own. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. And I don't know how people are going to be able to travel either. What is air travel going to look like in 6 months? And here we are, December 17th. 6 months from now is about the start of festival season. Does anybody honestly think we're going to be playing festivals in 6 months? Panita Applebaum saying, I'm still owed my 2019 tax return. See, you're still owed money. The federal government still owes you money from your 2019 tax return. But when Wall Street says, "Yo, we need $4.7 trillion," they got the money directly wired to them. Here's what I don't understand. Wall Street got their money directly wired to them. Why in the world can't the American people get their money directly wired to us? Directly. Just like Wall Street. And I don't want to hear from anybody, oh, well, we don't have the infrastructure to do it. We can't do it. We can't do it. I don't know how to do it. I'm not sure. I don't know. You know who's good at processing payments? Billions of dollars of payments every month? The Social Security Department, right over there in Woodlawn, Maryland, on the west side of Baltimore. Because they process Social Security payments. And they figured out a way to say, oh, you know what? Oh, you're so-and-so. Here's your bank account. Okay, we'll put that money in your account right away. They know how to do that because they do it all the time. They do it all the time. And in order to get the first stimulus check, you had to file a tax return. I mean, if you have a bank account and if you wanted it direct deposited, you had your bank routing number and your bank account number. And if you're lucky, they'll go ahead and direct deposit your tax refunds directly to you. I mean, they couldn't do that with stimulus checks. You just say, okay, hey, let's contact the IRS. Let's figure out who filed a tax return. Let's go ahead and verify your banking information. Get the money moving. Instead of putting stimulus checks in the mail. Oh, and guess what? If you filed for unemployment, the unemployment information hasn't changed because you had to have a bank account and they give you one of those fancy unemployment cards with all your benefit money on it. How about just having the federal government contact state governments, probably just Department of Labor in many states where your unemployment benefits are processed, and say, hey, you know what? Instead of sending $600 checks to everybody, we're going to go ahead and send $600 to everybody that's filed unemployment, and we're going to process it through your state. That way we, the federal government, don't have to go through the extra step of printing out checks and then sending them. But hey, what do I know? Bruno's saying, I don't see it happening. Maybe in a few countries where it's kind of stabilized. Some soccer games are already accepting 5,000 people in the crowd in Europe. Gigs with like 100 200 people might not be the bigger issue. I agree. And here's the thing: I watch more than my share of football. And for example, in the English league, and there's a bunch of good games in England today. England has different tiers of the lockdown, and I know London has gone completely into tier 3 lockdown. Everything's basically closed at this point. Certain parts of London were in tier 3, other parts were in tier 2. So, for example, if you were at White Hart Lane to watch a Tottenham game, which is North London, they had 2,000 people in the stands. But if you were watching, let's say, a Newcastle game, they were like, no fans. They're in a completely different tier. And let's say you were at, Crystal Palace, my team, in Selhurst Park in South London. They had 2,000 people in their game last week. Actually yesterday for West Ham. And I think that game was at home for Crystal Palace. And they played West Ham. And West Ham is also in London. But quite strangely enough, it's West Ham, but it's in East London. But I think Chelsea, which is the west end of London, they didn't have any fans for their game. So it's all a matter of where you are and how bad the coronavirus is taking hold in your particular jurisdiction. There are certain countries that are allowing plate people and other countries aren't. Germany has gone into complete lockdown again. They're like, hey, we're going to close everything up, shutting everything down. Stores, whatever, we're shutting everything down. That would probably also apply to football matches also. I don't think they had anybody for yesterday's game, the Bayern Munich game yesterday in the stands. I don't think they had anybody because they're against mass gatherings. So if football matches can't have 5,000 people, and some of these stadiums are big stadiums, even if you have a small stadium, for example, Fulham, which is in the West End of London, right on the banks of the River Thames, they play in a stadium called Craven Cottage, holds about 20,000 people. Even if you said, okay, hey, you know what, let's go ahead and put 2,000 people inside this stadium and spread everybody out. And they're like, nah, we're not going to do that now. How are you going to get 100 to 200 people inside a venue? How are you going to get 100, 200 people inside a venue and have them, I guess, physically distanced enough to meet whatever health protocols or standards that are being prescribed by some sort of health department? How are you going to do that? How? I used to live in Vancouver this time last year. I used to go to the Red Room all the time. All the time. It's right down the street on Pender Street, right down from where I used to be living. Red Room's capacity, if you packed everybody in there like sardines, maybe held 400 people. Maybe. How are you going to put 50 people inside the Red Room? One of my favorite venues ever, unfortunately closed because of this pandemic, a place in Washington, D.C., in the Adams Morgan section of Washington, D.C., called U Street Music Hall. U Street Music Hall's capacity, if you packed everybody in there, maybe was 300, 350 people. Maybe. How are you going to put 40 people inside that venue? And then charge everybody appropriately to make up for the lost income and revenue that you've had over this pandemic. You're going to be charging one-day festival ticket prices to go to a party on a Thursday night. Bradley Gretzinger saying, we miss you. Miss you too, brother. Hopefully we can all get back sometime soon. We'll see. Panita Apple Bum saying, U Street, rest in peace. Yeah, it's a great venue. Great sound system. It's good times. Bruno saying, maybe outdoor gigs will be an option. Maybe. You have outdoor gigs, spread everybody out. Okay. But even with that, if you're a festival, let's say you have a festival, because a festival is an outdoor gig. How do you regulate having people being physically distanced at a festival? Especially when everybody likes to be either nice and close up by the stage where the speakers are, or congregating around the speakers, which may not necessarily be right up front by the stage. How do you do that? I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. And that's why I'm saying I just don't see this happen, festivals, clubs. I don't see it happening next summer. I don't see it. I mean, we're talking essentially 6 months from now. 6 months from now. Okay. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I'm not buying it. I don't see it. I don't see how that happens with people's bank accounts being completely decimated as a result of this pandemic, people not having disposable income, and then we're asking them to go ahead and just start up like nothing happened. I don't know. I don't see it. I would be wonderful, but I think summer next year is canceled also. I think people are going to start moving around again, show-wise, club-wise, event-wise, probably spring of 2022. And think about how many clubs have closed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. How many more venues do you think will be available if there's no more music and culture events for another 12 to 15 to 18 months. How many more venues do you think are going to shut down? Bradley saying there'll be vaccine machines like cigarette and condom machines in clubs. Maybe. Saying I agree. I don't see it in 6 months either, unfortunately. I don't see it. Look how take for instance the United States. Look how disorganized the United States has been with regards to trying to figure out a stimulus bill. And we're talking money. This is money. And the CARES Act expired July 31st. The CARES Act expired 5 months ago, and Congress is scrambling right now to try to put something together last minute. And this is something that we knew was going to expire, needed to be resolved before July 31st. What makes you think Congress is going to be able to mobilize itself properly to vaccinate all 330 million Americans and do it timely, effectively, and safely? What makes you think that's going to happen? And just because you vaccinate everybody doesn't mean that the economy is going to just magically rebound either. Hey, we're vaccinated. Okay, great. Now I've got a vaccine and I still don't have a job. See, that happened. Tomas saying people just have to host renegade parties in nature. I like that idea. I like a renegade party, like a warehouse party too, underground. People have already found a way. Burning Man unofficially happened this year. Yep. Yeah. I'm a big. At this point, you're going to have to start. You might, in order to keep underground musical and arts culture alive, it's going to have to go super underground, extremely underground. And my phone is exploding right now. People left and right looking to message me. It's going to have to go super underground. And then at that point, you're looking at potentially safety issues. You have to have harm reduction. How underground can it be when we're talking about having underground parties post-pandemic? I mean, what does that look like? So we'll see. 2 more topics I want to bring up to everybody's attention before I get out of here. I want to eat some lunch, and I got to pick up my daughter in 4 hours for gymnastics tonight. Thinking about the children that were stolen, that were taken, abducted in Kankara, Nigeria by Boko Haram. Boko Haram is another terrorist organization in Africa. There's a couple of terrorist cells, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab. 330 kids were taken from a school, 330 boys. 15 of them have been recovered. We don't know where the other boys are. Well, hopefully Nigerian forces will be able to find those boys and bring them back safely to their families and to their friends. Something else I want to bring up today. Today is December 17th, 2010. On this date, 10 years ago, a Tunisian man named Mohamed Bouazizi lit himself on fire in protest. Why did he do that? He did that because he was tired of being harassed by police. This happened in a town called Sidi Bouzid, Tunisia. Mohamed Bouazizi was a fruit vendor. He was selling fruit. He was trying to make some money to support himself. From what I understood, he was a student in university, and he was selling fruit to make ends meet. The cops were consistently harassing him. One day, a female cop spit on him, slapped him, took his fruit, and then took his fruit scales. He went to the local constable, said, "Hey, look, I want my stuff back. Give me my stuff back. I'm just trying to sell my fruit and make a living." Constable's like, "Nah, we don't, get out of here. Fuck off. We don't want to talk to you." So Mohamed Bouazizi, in the middle of the town square, lights himself on fire in protest. This act of self-immolation began what is called the Jasmine Revolution in Tunisia. Jasmine is the national flower of Tunisia. That movement spread to other countries across Northern Africa and Middle East. The common acronym for the Middle East and Northern Africa is called MENA, M-E-N-A, Middle East, Northern Africa. And that began what we now know as Arab Spring. Mohamed Bouazizi died of his injuries on January 4th, 2011. The president of the country at the time, a gentleman named Zine El Abidine bin Ali, visited him in the hospital and then supposedly offered to take him to France to get his injuries treated. That never happened. Bin Ali was eventually overthrown, and I forget who the next president of Tunisia was, but he was democratically elected, and they had constitutional reforms. It's important that we recognize Mohamed Bouazizi's act of bravery, act of defiance, because it's that sort of defiance that we need in the United States. It's that sort of defiance that we're consistently seeing in France with their protests. It's the sort of defiance that we need to see in Canada. And it's the sort of defiance that we are seeing right now in India. It's the sort of defiance that we are seeing right now in Thailand with the rubber duck revolution. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. We need a workers' strike. We need to overthrow this government. We need to shut this country down. Bradley Gretzinger saying, fines in Alberta, Canada for running a retail business could be much as $500,000. Unbelievable. And if you have a retail business, what are your chances of your revenue now being $500,000? That's a fine. You're lucky right now if you have a small business where the revenue is $500,000, and that's a good year. Look at what this pandemic has done. And the Canadian government is not doing a whole lot to help small businesses. Panita Applebum saying, looking at another rave act, SMH, shaking my head. Yes, and by the way, care to guess who the author of the rave act was? This happened, oh gosh, I want to say in 1991 or 1992. Yep, current President-elect Joe Biden. He wrote the rave act. He didn't sign off on it or proofread it. He wrote it. He wrote that. Said all I wanted to say for today. I want to thank everybody that participated in today's chat. Out to co-CEO Tomas. We got to get on the call soon, brother. It's a lot cooking. Anyways, thank you everybody for participating. Might do this again tomorrow. We'll see to see how I feel. All right. Hope everybody stays safe and stays healthy. And that's it for me, everybody. Peace.